Episode 702. Book Talk begins at 20 minutes and 12 seconds. Cranford begins with episode 679. Welcome to CraftLit, the podcast for crafters who love books. My name is Heather Ordover, and I'm podcasting from where the Delaware River meets the Old York Road, New Hope, Pennsylvania. Episode 702. Caveat Emptor. This episode of CraftLit is brought to you by some of our new patrons and supporters. This week we would like to thank Deputy Marathani, Hannah, and Megan Gutledge. Thank you so much for joining us and for supporting the show. Couldn't do it without you. Well, hello, how are you? I'm drinking tea and sucking on a cough drop. And I overdid it at the beginning of last week, so I've spent the end of last week and the weekend kind of paying for feeling normal and therefore acting normal, and that was a mistake. But today I'm a little better than I was yesterday, and that's just great. So I hope you too are doing well. And I have all sorts of stuff for you today. So first off, Bookmark Exchange. Don't forget, if you are interested in sending a bookmark and getting a bookmark from a CraftLit listener, we have a link out to the sign-up form. If you are willing to send a bookmark to somebody who is outside of your country, there's a place for you to put that down. There's also a place for you to put things like your Instagram handle or your Ravelry name or things like that, so that when somebody receives your bookmark in the mail, they can post a picture of it and say thank you, and you'll get tagged. Don't forget. That's good information to share. Then you can know that somebody got your thing, which is awesome. Going off of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Catherine, who lives down the street from me, I did not know this. She is a hooked rug artist, a knitter, and a writer, and I will link out to her website. She sent me more fabric store links. She said, reuse centers are my go-to for fabric and all things craft. Here is an amazing state-by-state list, and I will link out to that. And then she said, there is an independent fabric store here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania called Gemma Fabrics, Gemma. So I will be going there very shortly, because one of the things I got from my mom was half a bolt. I don't remember how many yards. It's a lot of yards of our family tartan. So we got this back in the late 60s, very early 70s. There's a photograph of me and my cousin, who's a year younger than me, wearing our little jumpers. I had a little dress. He had his little shorts on, all in the family tartan. Oh my God. It was adorable. And my mom still has that dress. So we'll be framing that, and, cuteness alert kind of thing. But we still have fabric. So I think I'm going to make vests for everybody, but everybody's going to want a slightly different style of vest. So I need to get lining fabric, and then I want to put, for the back, on some of them, I'm going to have tartan fabric, but on some of them, I am going to put like a black, probably satin, a black, something shiny and flexible. And especially for my mom being in Tucson, she's not going to need to be wrapped in wool nearly as much as some of us will be. But I am so excited that there is now a fabric store that I can go to. That is very good news. So please do follow the link that she is sharing in the show notes to find out where there are creative reuse stores near you. I know prices at even reuse stores and thrift stores are going up because there are so many people going there now that it's starting to impact the people who need to shop at thrift stores. and that's pretty stinky. But creative reuse stores are different, and they are treasure troves and fun to go through. Okay, so I named this episode Buyer Beware. And I will have links to everything that I mentioned today in the show notes, so you can do your own deep dives into this if you are interested. But I want to tell you a little story of my last 5 days and then give you a call to action at the end. And I will provide you with all the materials you might need so you don't have to do anything beyond like talking to friends or family members about what I'm going to share with you, unless you want to. There's always more you can do, but it's not much. So several frustrating things happened to me in the last 5 days, and the frustration all had similar root causes. While looking for documents, instruction books, pattern books, manuals, I kept finding or being recommended or being served what is colloquially being referred to these days as AI slop. But where my discomfort with this started was when the YouTube algorithm served me a video with a very compelling picture for me and I admit, clickbaity title. I had never seen anything on YouTube that appeared to be a legit Victorian photograph where the video maker had gone and done the research about who was in the photograph and why was the photograph taken and what happened right after the photograph was taken. And you may not be surprised that I would find compelling. I'd never seen anything like that. And the short version is I still haven't, because it took me about 10 minutes before my brain started going, there is something funny about this story that the narrator is telling. And that the narrator voice didn't sound like an AI voice. It didn't have any of those kind of robotic things or mispronunciations. Like I saw one where the AI robot said Dan Aykroyd instead of Dan Aykroyd. Nobody makes that mistake. That's AI. At about the 14-minute mark, I paused the video and I started looking at the comments, and I saw that there was one lone commenter who was responding to everybody else's, oh my gosh, this is amazing, this is horrible, oh my gosh, I didn't know this is so, wow. And this poor, I think it was a woman, kept posting, it's not true. This is fiction. This is not historical. This is not reality. Do a Google search, you'll find out this didn't happen. And it was definitely like, a voice in the wilderness crying out to be heard. But this wasn't the first time that I had seen something like that happen. It was just the first time that I'd seen it on a video that caught me. Then over the weekend, I was looking for tatting patterns because of course I was. And I was looking for, a broad range, things that are new instruction books and historical ones. I have a Weldon's somewhere in the house, but I don't know. I was looking for stuff to share. Lately, I've been paying more attention to reviews on book sale sites, and the extra minutes that I have invested in doing that really paid off this time. I saw prices range from $2.97 to $30 for paper copies of texts, and that $30 book had a $27 Kindle version. If you see something like that, something's wrong. That is somebody scamming somebody somehow. I know that copies of What Would Madame Defarge Knit at one point on Amazon were going for like $80. That was not us. That was not Shannon Oakey. That was not Cooperative Press. That was not me. That was somebody who had bought copies and was just trying to make money. So be really aware. If the price seems way too good to be true or way too horrible to be true, something is fishy. The other thing was one of the tatting books that I found came from unknown publisher. That was the publisher's name. That was the link of the publisher's name. Everything else is legit, right? Page numbers, even though it's just a Kindle book, page numbers, ISBN, all of that. It's all there, but unknown publisher and a $27 Kindle edition seems odd. That was all annoying. I did finally find some things, but they were Dover books. They were books that had a track record, that had a provenance to them. But the thing that made me do a really deep dive was a book that was allegedly written in 1888, and it was $2.97, I think, for an ebook download. It was not on Amazon. It was not on bookshop.org. It was only for sale on the publisher's website, which is not totally unheard of, but it's a little odd. How did I find this book? How did I stumble on it? Pinterest. Pinterest, which really, there are ways you can tell Google not to serve you any Pinterest links, and I will put that information in the show notes too. From Pinterest, it sent me to the publisher's page, and I could tell something was fishy, but I wasn't getting anywhere doing my own research. I knew something was wrong with this book, but I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. So here's the thing that I learned about AI Slop. One of the fastest, easiest, best ways to find out if something is AI Slop is to ask AI. I will share the response that I got from ChatGPT and asking questions about this document so you can see all of its responses. I'll put that in the show notes. But you should understand when you look at this, I have spent months training my chatbot to only respond to me with verifiable information. If it can't provide me links and sources, I don't want to have anything to do with that answer. ChatGPT was given a mission in its programming to always come back with an answer. That means it will make up an answer if it can't find one. I have had to train mine to say, I didn't find a direct answer to that, but here's what I did find out. So this will probably not work straight out of the box. You may have to spend some time training your AI. I know I've mentioned here before the garbage in, garbage out truth of audio recording, which I've learned over the years as CraftLit has gone on and microphones have gotten more accessible to normal people. If you have a lousy recording with lots of background noise, you're going to wind up with a lousy end recording after you've tried to clean it up. It's just the way it is. That's true for AI too. If you frame your question poorly, you will get a marginally useful answer. And helpful safety tip here, once you get a good response, let the bot know. And once you do get that useful response, go back to the chatbot and ask, how should I have phrased my question in the first place to get a quality answer like that? Because we need some training to work with this stuff too. However, I know not everyone wants to spend the time and hassle in doing something like that. Instead, when you do find AI Slop, and you will if you are online at all, like if you're on YouTube, give the video or the post a thumbs down and add a comment like AI Slop ? You're not accusing, because you could be wrong, but just raise the specter in the comments. If you can, mark a video uninterested or don't show me anything from this channel again, do that. Share the Lousy Slop channel or scam product on your social media with a "this is AI Slop, don't spend any money here," and use like hashtag AI Slop so it's easy to find posts with that tag. And these same things can be done in various ways on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. And I'll be spending the rest of my week rounding up sources for how to spot this garbage and how to respond and how to detach your online life from as many algorithmic feeds as possible. And I'll put all of that information in an article on my Substack, and I'll link back to that from the show notes. And I know I've said this over and over, but I'll say it again for our younger listeners. Back before Serial showed the world what podcasts were and showed corporations just how much money they could make from them, people had blogs, just normal people. They wrote about and documented with pictures and instructions all the nifty things that they did, and you could learn a lot from people's blogs. The bar for entry was very low. Anybody with a computer and a keyboard could do it, and you could find out amazing things. And you discovered other amazing things, usually by following a blogger's blog roll of blogs that they liked and followed, places that they went to for interesting information and patterns and things like that. And that means that if you only ever found new bloggers via the blogs of people you already trusted, you were rarely, if ever, going to be disappointed with the content you were consuming, which I think we can agree is not the world we're living in right now. And that's because every time that we get lazy, and I am talking to myself, Every time we get lazy and let an algorithm decide what we should watch or see or listen to next, we are letting go of the control of our consumption just a little bit more. And I am seriously concerned about people just a generation older than I am who only just learned that Nigerian princes don't generally need to do some complex baking with them. It's going to get worse. So, as part of the craft literati, I hope that you, like me, will pick up the mantle and go to your public library, your local library, and offer to host a meetup. Not a class. You don't have to prepare anything more than what I'll put in the show notes for you. Just go. Be there. Be a human person there with a phone or a tablet or a computer. Be kind. Have a little sign, ask me about AI. People will come and ask you if something they found is safe. And if you go there and do that every month, people will know they can come and see you there and get some help. The goal isn't to tell them, yes, that's slop, or no, that isn't. The goal is to show them how they can figure it out themselves. Because it really isn't only buyer beware. Right now, it's sanity beware. It won't take many times of being hoodwinked before everyone stops trusting everything. It's one of the reasons you're going to notice CraftLit adding never AI tags to episodes and social media posts so that people know that, I hate the word, but CraftLit is authentic. It is me. I own my mistakes. I own the wins. I own my words, good ones, bad ones, places that I've screwed things up. It's all me. If it were perfect, you should worry that it's a bot. But all of that said, I hope that you do that. I am doing that at my local library. Same thing. I'll just go. I'm hoping I can get a regular slot to go every month, every 2 weeks, something like that, and just be there for people to talk to about this stuff. And like I said, there will be information in the show notes and at least one handout for you so that you can download that and use that with other people so they can kind of see a checklist of what do you check first in order to prevent this stuff from scamming you. But because I hate ending on a downer with something like this, and I don't think it's a downer really, I think if we mobilize and go out and do this, we can have a huge effect, talking to friends, talking to family, talking to strangers in a place like a library, and just letting them know that they're not crazy for thinking that something is up with a website or a video or a book or any of those things. It's okay to be suspicious, especially when somebody's trying to sell you something. So this is real because every so often you come across something that actually does work. And this one did. I saw it. I don't even remember where I saw it. It may honestly have been from an Etsy store. It's called THIMTEC. It's thimble tape. Actually, it could be called THIMTEC because it's tacky. They have very, very bright colored rolls of tape and 3/4 inches by 45 feet. So for not very much money, I got 3 rolls. The pink roll is upstairs. It behaves as advertised. So it tells you to take like a 10-inch piece of THIMTEC tape and wrap it around as tightly as you can get it. You can't actually get it all that tight. You can layer it so that it's firm, but it's not cutting off circulation or anything, even though I did wrap it tight. So I learned, number one, can I use this THIMTEC tape to push very tiny sharps through very tight fabric? No, I cannot. That hurt. But can I use it when I'm hand sewing in general? Yes, far fewer sore fingers at the end of the day. Can it help grip needles when you pull them through the fabric? Yes, although finger cots on my thumb still work best as a pinchy thing. And I'll put links to the finger cots in the show notes as well. The THIMTEC does not tear, so you will need scissors to cut a piece off. And I found that one 10-inch, 25-centimeter piece to start wrapping with was fine, but I needed to add another layer to a more targeted area for this to be super useful. So, all told, it's 20 inches tops, 50 centimeters tops of a 45-foot roll for every time you apply. And it does say reuse these, because I can pull that off. I can pull the little tube that I made off of my finger, and it holds its shape, and then I can put it back on and not have to waste things, which we know we just don't like doing. So, hey, something that worked. I was very happy about that. All right, so Mr. Harrison's confession. Last week, chaos ensued. Mrs. Tompkinson was convinced that Mr. Harrison had been coming on to Caroline and was now denying it, and drama, 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 tears. I'll give you a little heads up. This week is not going to be all that much different. Just different people are involved. There's some very funny parts today as well. But things to know beforehand, if you didn't know before, assembly halls, they came up a lot in North and South, and we just republished North and South as bundles of episodes that have been cleaned up over on YouTube. So we're getting comments from people who are listening to North and South for the first time. They just found it and found us. And also some people who are listening to it again. And assembly halls were one of the places where the unions could have meetings, people could organize. They did music hall nights, they did their dance nights there, like in Jane Austen's time. You would have had the assembly rooms. Same thing. You're going to hear a reference to an assembly hall today. Grenadiers. When you think about British military guys at the palace at Buckingham, the guys in the black pants and the red jackets with the belts, and often the really big hats, those are Grenadiers. They go way back in time. I'm linking out to their website. You can go read about their history if you are interested. But there is a joke that depends on you knowing what Grenadiers are. There's another joke that depends on you knowing who Paris was and how he and apples wound up being connected together. And it is in Greek mythology. I'm sure you heard there was a goddess, like a lower marginal goddess, who didn't get invited to a big foofy wedding. Eris, the goddess of discord, not the person you want ticked off at you. She threw an apple into the room where everybody was, and it said on it, to the fairest, or for the fairest. And so Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera started arguing amongst themselves about who this apple was really for. I think it was Zeus decided, well, Paris just did a real solid with Ares. There was some competition between the two of them, and Paris gave the award, the reward, to Ares. So they're like, Paris is a stand-up guy. He's not a cheaterhead. Let's get him to decide. And he basically waited until he got bribed. He got bribed by all of them. Say that I'm the fairest, honey. Aphrodite promised him the love of Helen. That would be Helen, who became Helen of Troy. So rolling an apple into a group of women is one hint that you're talking about this particular mythological story. Paris and the apple would be another way you could refer to it. The three goddesses fighting over who is the prettiest. All of that. You're going to hear a Paris apple joke today. You will hear a reference to, you can write to me direct to Meurice's. This is when people traveled back in the day, they knew their itinerary. They had written letters to reserve space, a room for them when they were going to go somewhere far away, which means they had the address of the hotel or the inn or the space that they were going to be staying at. And that meant that if you needed to get a hold of them, you could write to them just generically, like at the Hilton in St. Louis by the Arch. The people at the hotel would get the mail and hand it on to the person in question. So that's what he's saying when he says direct correspondence to Meurice's. And there's a reference to a peace society, PEACE, capital P, capital S. I looked this up in 1816 in England. A peace society was founded. They would have met probably at an assembly hall. I think it was the first recorded actively active pacifist organization or active group of people who were basically lobbying for peace, for pacifism, ever, or at least ever in the modern world, which I thought was kind of cool. So yeah, they started in 1816. There's a reference to them in today's chapters. And that is it. Okay, let's listen to Noel Badrian reading us chapters 20 through 24. And just like last week, some of these chapters are really super short. So it carries us to the end of this next arc of what happens to Mr. Harrison as all sorts of stuff happens to him. All right, let's listen. Here we go.
Section 8 of Mr. Harrison's Confessions by Elizabeth Gaskell. Chapter 20. That afternoon I met Mr. Bullock in the street. My mind was so full of the affair with Miss Tomkinson that I should have passed him without notice if he had not stopped me short and said that he must speak to me about my wonderful £500, I supposed. But I did not care for that now. "What is this I hear," said he severely, "about your engagement with Mrs. Rose?" "With Mrs. Rose?" said I, almost laughing, although my heart was heavy enough. "Yes, with Mrs. Rose," said he sternly. "I'm not engaged to Mrs. Rose," I replied. "There is some mistake." "I'm glad to hear it, sir," he answered, "very glad. It requires some explanation, however. Mrs. Rose has been congratulated, and has acknowledged the truth of the report. It is confirmed by many facts. The work table you bought, confessing your intention of giving it to your future wife, is given to her. How do you account for these things, sir?" I said I did not pretend to account for them. At present a good deal was inexplicable, and when I could give an explanation, I did not think that I should feel myself called upon to give it to him. "Very well, sir, very well," replied he, growing very red. "I shall take care and let Mr. Morgan know the opinion I entertain of you. What do you think that a man deserves to be called who enters a family under the plea of friendship, and takes advantage of his intimacy to win the affections of the daughter, and then engages himself to another woman?" I thought he referred to Miss Caroline. I simply said I could only say that I was not engaged, and that Miss Tomkinson had been quite mistaken in supposing I had been paying any attentions to her sister beyond those dictated by mere civility. "Miss Tomkinson? Miss Caroline? I don't understand to what you refer. Is there another victim of your perfidy?" "What I allude to are the attentions you have paid to my daughter, Miss Bullock." "Another!" I could but exclaim, as I had done in the case of Miss Caroline. But I began to be in despair. Would Miss Horseman too come forward as a victim to my tender affections? It was all Mr. Morgan's doing, who had lectured me into this tenderly deferential manner. But on the score of Miss Bullock, I was brave in my innocence. I had positively disliked her, and so I told her father, though in more civil and measured terms, adding that I was sure the feeling was reciprocal. He looked as if he would like to horsewhip me. I longed to call him out. "I hope my daughter has had sense enough to despise you. I hope she has, that's all. I trust my wife may be mistaken as to her feelings." So he had heard all through the medium of his wife. That explained something, and rather calmed me. I begged he would ask Miss Bullock if she ever thought that I had any ulterior objective in my intercourse with her, beyond mere friendliness, and not so much of that, I might have added. I would refer it to her. "Girls," said Mr. Bullock a little more quietly, "do not like to acknowledge that they have been deceived and disappointed. I consider my wife's testimony as likely to be nearer the truth than my daughter's for that reason. And she tells me she never doubted but that, if not absolutely engaged, you understood each other perfectly. She is sure Jemima is deeply wounded by your engagement to Mrs. Rose. Once for all, I am not engaged to anybody. Till you have seen your daughter, and learnt the truth from her, I will wish you farewell." I bowed in a stiff haughty manner, and walked off homewards. But when I got to my own door, I remembered Mrs. Rose, and all that Mr. Bullock had said about her acknowledging the truth of the report of my engagement to her. Where could I go to be safe? Mrs. Rose, Miss Bullock, Miss Caroline, they lived as it were at the 3 points of an equilateral triangle. Here was I in the centre. I would go to Mr. Morgan's and drink tea with him. There, at any rate, I was secure from any one wanting to marry me, and I might be as professionally bland as I liked without being misunderstood. But there, too, a contretemps awaited me. Chapter 21. Mr. Morgan was looking grave. After a minute or two of humming and hawing, he said, "I have been sent for to Miss Caroline Tomkinson, Mr. Harrison. I am sorry to hear of this. I am grieved to find that there seems to have been some trifling with the affections of a very worthy lady. Miss Tomkinson, who is in sad distress, tells me that they had every reason to believe that you were attached to her sister. May I ask if you do not intend to marry her?" I said nothing was farther from my thoughts. "My dear sir," said Mr. Morgan, rather agitated, "do not express yourself so strongly and vehemently. It is derogatory to the sex to speak so. It is more respectful to say, in these cases, that you do not venture to entertain a hope. Such a manner is generally understood, and does not sound like such positive objection." "I cannot help it, sir. I must talk in my own natural manner. I would not speak disrespectfully of any woman, but nothing should induce me to marry Miss Caroline Tomkinson, not if she were Venus herself, and Queen of England into the bargain. I cannot understand what has given rise to the idea." "Indeed, sir, I think that is very plain. You have a trifling case to attend to in the house, and you invariably make it a pretext for seeing and conversing with the lady." "That was her doing, not mine," said I vehemently. "Allow me to go on. You are discovered on your knees before her. A positive injury to the establishment, as Miss Tomkinson observes. A most passionate valentine is sent, and when questioned, you acknowledge the sincerity of meaning which you affix to such things." He stopped, for in his earnestness he had been talking more quickly than usual, and was out of breath. I burst in with my explanations. The valentine I knew nothing about. "It is in your handwriting," said he coldly. "I should be most deeply grieved to. In fact, I will not think it possible of your father's son. But I must say, it is in your handwriting." I tried again, and at last succeeded in convincing him that I had been only unfortunate, not intentionally guilty of winning Miss Caroline's affections. I said that I had been endeavouring, it was true, to practise the manner he had recommended, of universal sympathy, and recalled to his mind some of the advice he had given me. He was a good deal hurried. "But, my dear sir, I had no idea you would carry it out to such consequences. Philandering, Miss Tomkinson called it. That is a hard word, sir. My manner has been always tender and sympathetic, but I am not aware that I ever excited any hopes. There never was any report about me. I believe no lady has ever attached to me. You must strive after this happy medium, sir." I was still distressed. Mr. Morgan had only heard of one, but there were 3 ladies, including Miss Bullock, hoping to marry me. He saw my annoyance. "Don't be too much distressed about it, my dear sir. I was sure you were too honourable a man from the first. With a conscience like yours, I would defy the world." He became anxious to console me, and I was hesitating whether I would not tell him all my 3 dilemmas, when a note was brought in to him. It was from Mrs. Munton. He threw it to me with a face of dismay. "My dear Mr. Morgan, I most sincerely congratulate you on the happy matrimonial engagement I hear you have formed with Miss Tomkinson. All previous circumstances, as I have just been remarking to Miss Horseman, combine to promise you felicity, and I wish that every blessing may attend your married life. Most sincerely, yours, Jane Munton. I could not help laughing. He had been so lately congratulating himself that no report of the kind had ever been circulated about himself. He said, "Sir, this is no laughing matter. I assure you it is not." I could not resist asking if I was to conclude that there was no truth in the report. "Truth, sir? It's a lie from beginning to end. I don't like to speak too decidedly about any lady, and I've a great respect for Miss Tomkinson, but I do assure you, sir, I'd as soon marry one of Her Majesty's Life Guards. I would rather. It would be more suitable. Miss Tomkinson is a very worthy lady, but she's a perfect grenadier." He grew very nervous. He was evidently insecure. He thought it not impossible that Miss Tomkinson might come and marry him vi et armis. I am sure he had some dim idea of abduction in his mind. Still, he was better off than I was, for he was in his own house, and report had only engaged him to one lady, while I stood like Paris among 3 contending beauties. Truly, an apple of discord had been thrown into our little town. I suspected at the time what I know now, that it was Miss Horseman's doing. Not intentionally, I will do her the justice to say, but she had shouted out the story of my behaviour to Miss Caroline up Mrs. Munton's trumpet, and that lady, possessed with the idea that I was engaged to Mrs. Rose, had imagined the masculine pronoun to relate to Mr. Morgan, whom she had seen only that afternoon tete-a-tete with Miss Tomkinson, condoling with her in some tender deferential manner, I'll be bound. Chapter 22. I was very cowardly. I positively dared not go home, but at length I was obliged to go. I had done all I could to console Mr. Morgan, but he refused to be comforted. I went at last. I rang at the bell. I don't know who opened the door, but I think it was Mrs. Rose. I kept a handkerchief to my face, and, muttering something about having a dreadful toothache, I flew up to my room and bolted the door. I had no candle, but what did that signify? I was safe. I could not sleep, and when I did fall into a sort of doze, it was 10 times worse wakening up. I could not remember whether I was engaged or not. If I was engaged, who was the lady? I had always considered myself as rather plain than otherwise, but surely I had made a mistake. Fascinating I certainly must be, but perhaps I was handsome. As soon as day dawned, I got up to ascertain the fact at the looking-glass. Even with the best disposition to be convinced, I could not see any striking beauty in my round face, with an unshaven beard, and a nightcap like a fool's cap at the top. I took off my nightcap. No, I must be content to be plain, but agreeable. All this I tell you in confidence. I would not have my little bit of vanity known for the world. I fell asleep towards morning. I was awakened by a tap at my door. It was Peggy. She put in a hand with a note. I took it. "It is not from Miss Horseman," said I, half in joke, half in very earnest fright. "No, sir. Mr. Morgan's man brought it." I opened it. It ran thus: "My dear Sir, it is now nearly 20 years since I have had a little relaxation, and I find that my health requires it. I have also the utmost confidence in you, and I am sure this feeling is shared by our patients. I have, therefore, no scruple in putting in execution a hastily formed plan, and going to Chesterton to catch the early train on my way to Paris. If your accounts are good, I shall remain away probably a fortnight. Direct to Meurice's. Yours most truly, J. Morgan. P.S. Perhaps it may be well not to name where I am gone, especially to Miss Tomkinson. He had deserted me. He, with only one report, had left me to stand my ground with 3. Mrs. Rose's kind regards, sir, and it's nearly 9 o'clock. Breakfast has been ready this hour, sir. Tell Mrs. Rose I don't want any breakfast, or stay, for I was very hungry. I will take a cup of tea and some toast up here. Peggy brought the tray to the door. "I hope you're not ill, sir," said she kindly. "Not very. I shall be better when I get into the air." "Mrs. Rose seems sadly put about," said she. "She seems so grieved like." I watched my opportunity, and went out by the side door in the garden. Chapter 23. I had intended to ask Mr. Morgan to call at the vicarage, and give his parting explanation before they could hear the report. Now I thought that if I could see Sophy, I would speak to her myself, but I did not wish to encounter the vicar. I went along the lane at the back of the vicarage, and came suddenly upon Miss Bullock. She coloured, and asked me if I would allow her to speak to me. I could only be resigned, but I thought I could probably set one report at rest by this conversation. She was almost crying. "I must tell you, Mr. Harrison, I have watched you here in order to speak to you. I heard with the greatest regret of papa's conversation with you yesterday." She was fairly crying. "I believe Mrs. Bullock finds me in her way, and wants to have me married. It is the only way in which I can account for such a complete misrepresentation as she has told papa. I don't care for you in the least, sir. You never paid me any attentions. You've been almost rude to me, and I have liked you the better. That's to say, I never have liked you." "I am truly glad to hear what you say," answered I. "Don't distress yourself. I was sure there was some mistake. But," she cried bitterly, "it is so hard to feel that my marriage, my absence, is desired so earnestly at home. I dread every new acquaintance we form with any gentleman. It is sure to be the beginning of a series of attacks on him, of which everybody must be aware, and to which they may think I am a willing party. But I should not much mind if it were not for the conviction that she wishes me so earnestly away. Oh, my own dear mamma, you would never—" She cried more than ever. I was truly sorry for her, and had just taken her hand, and began, "My dear Miss Bullock," when the door in the wall of the vicarage garden opened. It was the vicar letting out Miss Tomkinson, whose face was all swelled with crying. He saw me, but he did not bow or make any sign. On the contrary, he looked down as from a severe eminence, and shut the door hastily. I turned to Miss Bullock. "I'm afraid the vicar has been hearing something to my disadvantage from Miss Tomkinson, and it is very awkward," she finished my sentence, "to have found us here together. Yes, but as long as we understand that we do not care for each other, it does not signify what people say." "Oh, but to me it does," said I. "I may, perhaps, tell you, but do not mention it to a creature. I am attached to Miss Hutton." "To Sophy? Oh, Mr. Harrison, I am so glad. She is such a sweet creature. Oh, I wish you joy." "Not yet. I have never spoken about it." "Oh, but it is certain to happen." She jumped with a woman's rapidity to a conclusion. and then she began to praise Sophie. Never was a man yet who did not like to hear the praises of his mistress. I walked by her side. We came past the front of the vicarage together. I looked up, and saw Sophie there, and she saw me. That afternoon she was sent away, sent to visit her aunt ostensibly, in reality because of the reports of my conduct, which were showered down upon the vicar, and one of which he saw confirmed by his own eyes. Chapter 24. I heard of Sophie's departure as one heard of everything, soon after it had taken place. I did not care for the awkwardness of my situation, which had so perplexed and amused me in the morning. I felt that something was wrong, that Sophie was taken away from me. I sank into despair. If anybody likes to marry me, they might. I was willing to be sacrificed. I did not speak to Mrs. Rose. She wondered at me, and grieved over my coldness, I saw, but I had left off feeling anything. Miss Tomkinson cut me in the street, and it did not break my heart. Sophie was gone away. That was all I cared for. Where had they sent her to? Who was her aunt, that she should go and visit her? One day I met Lizzie, who looked as though she had been told not to speak to me, but could not help doing so. "Have you heard from your sister?" said I. "Yes." "Where is she? I hope she is well." "She is at the Lyoms." I was not much wiser. "Oh yes, she is very well. Fanny says she was at the assembly last Wednesday, and danced all night with the officers. I thought I would enter myself a member of the Peace Society at once. She was a little flirt, and a hard-hearted creature. I don't think I wished Lizzie good-bye. End of section 8.
Okay, there were some good jokes in there. And perhaps my favorite, off the top of my head, is Mr. Morgan saying, "I don't understand why all of these problems are happening to you, young Mr. Harrison. I've been working with these people for ages, and none of this ever happened to me. Nobody ever thought of me as a romantic interest." And I'm sitting there going, I wonder why. And it just doesn't register that he's, 35 years older than Mr. Harrison. And we don't know what he looks like, but nobody ever did that to me. Now, there was also a passing reference to somebody thinking that he, Mr. Morgan, was engaged to Mrs. Munton, which is where you get the "she's a perfect grenadier" joke popping in. I also loved that Mr. Harrison had to get out of bed and go to the mirror to look at himself. And even with his sleeping cap off, even with his nightcap off, he was not, according to himself, all that good looking. And I'm like, yeah, removing the nightcap might not be enough. It's true. But who hasn't done something like that? Like, oh, this doesn't look right. Maybe if I take the glasses off. Maybe if I add it. Very human. Mrs. Gaskell writes very good, very human people, I think. I also thought it was fascinating that after this one line was dropped about Mrs. Munson thinking that she's engaged to Mr. Morgan, and all of this stuff is happening, and it's very complicated and it's very unpleasant happening to Mr. Harrison. Morgan's response is, "I know you'll do fine. Bye." What a chicken. But it does go a long way to make it very clear that in a small town like this, if you are the doctor, or in this case, one of two, the doctors, it mattered what your social, not just social standing was in the community, but your reputation. Because that was A, your livelihood, but B, also the only way you were going to be able to help people and save lives is if they trust you. So, not for nothing. It's funny, but it's also not funny. He's not wrong. Staying there might not solve the problem, since he isn't the one who caused it, but he is the one who hired Mr. Harrison. So, I kind of get it. And then, of course, the most important thing is we find that Sophie has been sent away. I did love his conversation with Miss Bullock. I was so happy to learn that you didn't like me either. But it makes sense, right? And boy, what a dope Mr. Bullock is. I think I can trust my wife more than I can trust my teenage daughter. First off, second wife, you can see how miserable the girl is every time the stepmom tries to foist her on some man. It's not like this hasn't happened before. But I did love that little scene between the two of them. And it is, I think I said early on when she was being so persnickety that you needed to wait because you were going to like her eventually. And this was the scene where I thought, yeah, I'm good with her. She's good. And that is it. That is it, my people. Thank you for letting me do my AI slop rant. If you are interested in going to your library or to a assembly hall of some sort in your area, please do check in the show notes or over on my Substack, which is In It for the Long Haul at Substack. I haven't posted there for a long time. I am feeling enough better and I can look at screens that much more now than I was able to before. And I think because of that, I'll be able to compile all this information and post it for you over there so that you too can help people avoid being scammed. I hate that. I don't like being taken for an idiot ever. And I really, really have bad feelings in my heart for people who scam people. And I wanted to say, admittedly, that 1888 book, which I've linked out to in the show notes, the Pinterest pin that I saw was not a scam. They most likely went to Internet Archive, copy pasted the text of the book into a document and turned that into an ebook and did some basically tasteful AI cover art. And they're selling it for less than $3 for an ebook copy. That to me, that's like people taking CraftLit episodes and reselling them because the podcast is free, or LibriVox books, taking the audio because it is public domain, and then selling that, trying to make money off of the work that other people voluntarily did. But, their copyright on these 1888 books is non-existent at this point. So I get it, but it still didn't feel right. Where I had trouble was when I was on the website. As I scrolled through the page of the 1888 6th edition book, there were thumbnail pictures of covers in a similar style for the 5th edition, 4th edition, 3rd edition, 2nd edition, and 1st edition. All of them are listed there. It's all cover art, not clickable. So one of the things that the chatbot did find is that all of those books did exist, and several of them still do, but they're either at the Smithsonian or at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, locked away. They are not available. They have not been scanned. And so he was making it, and I say he because I went to his contact me page, and it is only the one guy who runs that site. By doing those thumbnails, he did make it look like he had those first 5 editions either on deck, or you were just doing something wrong when you clicked and you just can't get that copy because you didn't click the right way, which is not true. They just don't exist. I don't want to spend any more time getting snagged myself, and I don't think any of us really have time to spare to waste it on things that aren't real. If you have any tricks or tips for ways that you have discovered or recognized, I think recognized is probably the most important first step. Recognize that something is AI slop or is scammy or has been stolen and is being resold by somebody who doesn't own the copyright, which happens to patterns a lot, patterns by indie designers, as well as designers who've been published in some very respectable books and magazines. People steal their patterns all the time. If you have any tricks or tips on how to deal with that and where to deal with that, please send them in. You can write heather@craftlit.com with your ideas. I'll add them all to my Substack article. Or you can call 206-350-1642 and let us know what you think and how you have been combating this growing problem. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Have a great one. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye. You can find show notes for this episode and links to other episodes at craftlit.com. CraftLit also appears anywhere you can get a podcast: iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on, including its own dedicated app. There are lots of ways to support CraftLit, from patreon.com/craftlit to craftlit.com memberships and channel memberships on YouTube. You can find out more details at craftlit.com/premium. And as always, thank you for your support. And remember, if your hands are too busy to pick up a book, at least you can turn one on.